your entire relationship with reality itself is erotic because you've become consummate with reality. And so and in order to do that, that requires entering into deep relationship with the people in your neighborhood, with cooking, with getting a motorcycle, like anything that requires a kind of craft. The development of a kind of craft is the way by which you become consummate with your reality. Hey everyone, check out my brand new episode of The Heart Speaks where I talk to my good friend Idahosa Ness. Idahosa is a master at learning and teaching languages, and he developed an embodied, musically oriented system called the Mimic Method to help people on their language learning journey. In this episode, we talk about why it's important to take up embodied practices, especially in our hyper-digital age, where we are more incentivized to watch screens instead of participating in activities. Becoming embodied is good for us all, mind, body, and spirit. Watch this next episode to find out why. Idahosa Ness, the man, the myth, the legend. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? Before you do that, let me just start by saying that, like, Idahosa, you have introduced me to so many different worlds, so many different like philosophies. You basically red-pilled me into discovering John Vervaeke's work, which I'm a huge fan of. A lot of people know that. I learned how to learn French from you. I didn't actually learn French, but I learned how to learn French, which is incredibly valuable. So I consider you my brother from another mother, like such a badass. Okay, now you speak.
All those things, I know. Okay. So my name's Idahosa, and my main claim to fame is I created a program called the Mimic Method, which Chloe participated in, where you learn foreign languages. But unlike most programs, I focus on more fundamentals in communication, such as the physicality of things. You learn how to control every muscle in your tongue and every muscle in your face and tap into the natural rhythm and cadence of a language, mimic all their sounds, their gestures. And so that's my main project. And I personally speak 7 languages. I grew up in the US only speaking English, but always had an eye for travel. So when I became of age, I pieced out to Mexico and learned Spanish there as my second language. Then went to China, spent like a year in China, learned Chinese there. Then graduated university and went to Brazil. And it was in Brazil when I was learning Brazilian Portuguese and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and like Brazilian music that I came up with the Mimic Method. It's very musically inspired. So that was that. And just been I explored different things about human communication and movement, physicality, and life philosophies. So I'm kind of a mess, to be honest.
Wait, so I want to know more about how, when you were in Brazil, what was the aha moment or a series of aha moments with your encounter with Brazilian music and like the Mimic Method?
Yeah, sure. So, first, I went to Brazil. Let's start with how I got to Brazil. I was in college. I saw the movie City of God. This is back in like 2007 or whatever. And I didn't know anything about Brazil. And I remember seeing this movie in the opening scene. And I'm like, who are all these people who look like me speaking this weird Spanish? And why has no one told me about this? And what is this bomb music in the background? So that kind of put me on to Brazil. And I started learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was another avenue into it. So at some point in college, I just became obsessed. And I was like, I can't let myself die before I just fully experience this culture. Right. So that became like my mission in college.
I need to see this movie.
Yeah. So like, I saved up money and just traveled to Brazil. And my thing was I'm learning Brazilian Portuguese, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Brazilian music. So I was doing those things. And for the music part, I was in Rio de Janeiro, and one of the most musical cities, if not the most musical city I've ever lived in terms of there's just music going on all the time. Everyone sings, everyone dances. I had an instrument called the cavaquinho. This is it looks like a ukulele, but it's steel string and a different tuning. And I would just leave the house and like just have that in my hand, and then people would be like, "Hey, come back here, venga!" And people would come, like, and I would just be jamming people on the street. And one story, you'd love the story. I was walking with it once, and these two construction workers are like carrying some heavy stuff into the back of the truck, and they're like, "Hey, Cavaquinho guy, come here!" And then the guy's like, "Wow, Cavaquinho, you know, I used to play that when I was a kid." And his buddy was like, "Man, you ain't play Cavaquinho. You're playing that." I tell you what. He's like, "Hey, you mind if I play?" I'm like, "Sure, sure." And the guy grabs it and he's like, "Oh, what was it again?" Like, bring, bring, Santa Maria. He's like, angel voice. And I'm like, "Oh." And then all of a sudden, like, his voice comes in on the harmonies. And like, and like,
oh my God. I would have freaked out.
So, like, it was beautiful.
I would have cried, actually.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Well, thanks, man." And gives it to me. Like, throw some rocks and they drive off the pickup truck. And I was like, I love this place.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was the kind of life I had, like every day, just music. I was in a drum band. Meanwhile, I learned Portuguese. By that point, it's my third foreign language. I had Chinese and Spanish on my belt. And I realized by that point that the key to learning a language was to imitate as closely as possible, not just the accent, not just pronunciation, but the gestures, like just become those people in a physical kind of way. So for Brazilian Portuguese, I was like, oh, I'll do that by learning the music and like learn how to sing their songs and whatnot. And also when I was there, the musical idioms were different from what I was used to. So it was like very challenging for me to learn at first. I joined this drum band. I couldn't like get their rhythms, and it was pissing me off because I had a lot of musical confidence, and it was like humbling me. And like, what is it? Like, how can I get this? So I sat down one day and I came up with this process to like systematically break down and teach myself the rhythms in this drum band I was in. And so I did that for like a week, and then it clicked, and then I was able to play. And then maybe like a couple of weeks later or something, I had this super click in my head. I was like, oh, wait, this process I've been using to learn music, I can use this process to teach pronunciation. Because fundamentally, all you're learning is how to coordinate a motor skill with an acoustic perception.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
An acoustic perception. Wait, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so a motor skill coordinating with acoustic perception. Auditory perception. So right now I'm speaking to you, you and I are speaking. I'm just making fine motor movements with my tongue and my lips and my throat. And I'm doing that with a timing and a rhythm and the intonation and all that stuff. So there's a coordination between the nuances of the auditory stimuli and the nuances of the fine motor movement. But for speech, it's my mouth movement to these sounds. For cavaquinho or violin, which I used to play violin, is finger fine motor. Thumbs is hand, but it's the same learning process.
Yeah.
But when I had that epiphany, I basically what I did is I was on a bus. I was like, oh, and then I like got like, stop the bus. And like, it's already stopped. Shut up.
It's like a Pixar moment.
And then I started to like break down these songs into syllables and the movements bit by bit. And then I went out into the streets. I started getting random Brazilians, and I'm like, hey, try this out. And I basically like piece by piece teach them like an English song. They speak with a perfect accent within like 15 minutes. And then I get like random foreigners and do the same thing with like a Portuguese song, perfect accent. And I was like, this is it. And that was the beginning of like the MIM method.
That's cool. I'm curious to talk about this with you because we've talked about like embodiment versus like a strictly Cartesian framework, which sort of has this mind-body split. And I'm wondering how your coming to the mimic method has like influenced your ideas around that sort of like quote unquote highbrow philosophical, ways of thinking. How has one informed the other?
Oh, I mean, it's fundamental for me. The way I kind of break it down in my own models and language is I think about the fluencies, the human fluencies, and they split into physical fluency and spiritual fluency. So I look at the human being, and what we are is we're physical beings who have the access to the spirit realm, which is to say that there's all these patterns that we can embody. Yeah. Right. And so in this moment, my physical form is embodying something, and then you're embodying something, we're embodying it together, and that's how we're able to commune. So it's helpful to think about mind and body as a way to like access and think about each one, but you can never lose sight of the fact that it's the same thing. right? So method, the idea is you have to mimic, and mimicking for me is you can think of it as like you're copying something, but I personally think of it more as channeling something. So be a Brazilian, and they're communing through these patterns, the Brazilian pattern of speech and dance and culture. Yeah. And then I observe that through my senses of my eyes and my ears and my body. And then I mimic, right? Which is that if I take in that spirit enough, like, yeah, you got it to the band. And then I'm like, and then I start to move my body that way. Yeah. Now I can carry a left brain and then analyze like, oh no, his eyebrows are off or his tongue's a little bit here. But then I come back to like the bigger picture, right brain. Yeah. Boom. And then I embody it. And then it just becomes automatic and it becomes part of my identity. It becomes me. Yeah. So, that's cool. So the method was my entry point into that mode of thinking in general, for sure.
And I feel like though that whole approach that you just laid out is like, saying culturally taboo is putting it nicely. Certainly in our conversations in America about identity, like you would be, if you were white, let me clarify. If you were 100% white, you would be accused of cultural appropriation, which is like wild because everything that you're describing is like a portal into human connection.
Yeah. When that whole debate first came out, I was like, oh, people are passionate about it. I'm like, no one realizes that like my business is teaching people cultural appropriation. That's what I do. That's what I make money. Yes. You don't appropriate French culture into your body.
Yes.
Oh, terrible. The French people hate you when you speak their accent so perfectly and know their culture. Oh, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's wild. I think like, I feel like it's hamstringing us or it's hindering our capacity to like, I don't know, make real the American idea of out of many one. Like you can't actually bring that into fruition if you don't take up practices like the ones you're describing. But we'll see what happens. I think we've sort of gotten away a bit from like some of the things that were super popular in 2020. So we'll see. How did Capoeira like affect you when you were in Brazil?
You mean Jiu-Jitsu?
Did you do Jiu-Jitsu?
I've done Capoeira a couple of times. So I play it actually. I love Capoeira. But Jiu-Jitsu as well had a major influence. Training a martial art, I think everyone should do it. But yeah, lots of ways. I mean, you're with people in a community. And this is kind of more what I'm focusing on in my recent development is communities of practice and how that's fundamental to the human experience and how I'm trying to create that in my own stuff. What I mean by that is when you have a group of people communing around a shared goal, a shared toward an action. So it could be a musical group. In this case, in Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu emerged from the problem of like, how can I defeat an opponent who's larger, stronger, and faster than me, right? And what they do is that, take them to the ground and use leverage. So we're in this space with all these people like fighting, right? Like I love it. It's amazing. You're with someone and then like you're trying to like, kill them, technically trying to choke them out or like, break their arm or something like that. And you're going at each other with your full body, like everything's being touched, everything's like, and then you get to a point where like they're about to get you, and you're fighting. You're like, I won't submit to you. I won't. Okay, I submit. And then you tap.
Yeah.
And then the beautiful thing about Jiu-Jitsu, I love this so much about Jiu-Jitsu, especially for men and women. Like you can have someone who takes your back, right, and like choking you out, and then you're like, you're trying to kill you, and then you tap, and then in an instant, the dynamic switches from more like attack to like ultimate care. Where you're like, hey bro, you good? Yeah, blah, blah. Yeah. Wow, that was a great move. How'd you do that? I'll show it to you. I watched it on YouTube. And then so this convergence of like violence.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
In collegiality. Lots of martial arts have it, but I found like in striking martial arts, there's way more competitiveness because like you only get punched in the face, it hurts. And Jiu-Jitsu doesn't really hurt that much. So it's the most collegiate, like fraternal, friendly for men and women, by the way, too. Like I have a I put on and it helped her get through a lot of issues she had with like men because it's that same environment where you're like with men and they're literally trying to choke you out.
Yeah.
But then you're kind of like, hey, great job. And then it's like, it's really on a spiritual level, way more than people can really fathom until you experience it.
So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would be the martial art you would recommend to people to try out first? like in a hierarchy of martial arts?
I mean, obviously I'm biased. But for me, there's a practical consideration of, if you're getting attacked, the main difference of grappling and stuff like that is that you're not striking and punching people.
Okay.
It makes it a little bit more violent. If you're getting punched in the face, you're just grappling. I think grappling is fundamental to the mammalian experience. Like this is what dogs do, they grapple, so I think humans are meant to grapple throughout their entire lives. So yeah.
Oh, there's a metaphor here. I just thought of something. So two things. Rafe Kelly talks about this. I spoke with him on this podcast as well. And he was like, the importance of, how did he put it? I guess like play fighting in general or rough fighting in general is actually very, very important for human development. And you are actually far more capable of being nonviolent if you take up this violent practice because it's in a container.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that came to me was that the name of Israel means you've wrestled with God and with man and with prevail. So grapple is like literally built into spirituality at the core of our civilization.
Yeah, it is not for no reason. Because again, whenever I take one of my practices, spiritual practices, is that I ever see dogs play fighting, I stop what I'm doing and just watch it.
Oh, wow.
They're just like, and they stop and then they're like, they stop. They do kind of awkward, like dogs stop. It. It's just weird. But but there's so much going on because you're doing violence. Like you're like violence is like the most important thing if you think about it fundamentally. That's the most important base reality as far as I'm concerned is violence.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you're playing with base reality, but you're doing it with people in a trust environment, and love is profound. It's super profound. So for sure, yeah.
I definitely want to take up, like I do Tai Chi right now. I'm doing Tai Chi. I do like a very quick Tai Chi practice as a part of my morning meditation. And I got that idea from Vervaeke. Yeah. And, that's also very reminiscent of like water bending and Avatar. But I do want to figure out how to take up a violence practice as well for the specific reason that you're describing. I just like time management is such I've also like deliberately trying to collect as many practices as possible. Yeah. Like I do Tai Chi. I have a morning meditation practice. I just took this acting class with shout out to Stella Adler Acting Company. It was incredible. Their whole idea Stella Adler's philosophy was like your entire sort of like being is the instrument in acting. And that reframe of understanding acting as a kind of modal instrumentality, the same way you would approach playing guitar or playing drums, but like your entire being is that. And you want to train it to be receptive to the other or to the character that you're trying to embody. So like that's a practice that I've taken up. But I'm curious, like, because I know you just said you're trying to create communities of practice and you have your own set of practices. Like, how do you do time management with those? Yeah, or is that not an issue for you?
I mean, I'm pretty like scattered. Like I used to worry about, I need to spend time doing all the things. And now I just kind of follow what's happening with me in the moment. Like recently I've been developing a new physical education program. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. So yeah, I travel a lot. So I'm in a country that has like a bunch of cool stuff going on, like music wise, and I'll do more music stuff. If I go to music, I do a different practice. To that Stella Adler point, my general kind of model I have in my head is, I mentioned to you before, the human fluency, spiritual fluency. So the human being is an instrument to channel the spirits, right? And then I split those off into subcategories. So physical fluency. You have manual fluency, so doing things with your hands. Okay. And then you have like facial fluency. So, and then you have full body muscular fluency. So for me, when I think about stuff, I think, okay, I just got to make sure I'm doing some practice that addresses
all three of those. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not all of them. There's other ones, but yeah, like for me to be a complete person on a day-to-day basis, I need to use my whole body, and I need to be doing some kind of like fine coordination deal. Right now, I'm like trying to learn how to cook. So I'm like doing like knife skills, you know what I mean? So that's a man.
I see.
Yeah, just getting better at like a skill is, but for me, I used to try to bucket up things, and now I'm focusing more on just like place myself in community and then develop a curiosity and like obsession and love for the thing that I'm thinking about it and doing it all the time, like in the street. Like right now, if you see me in the street, I'm like gyrating because I'm like figuring out all my muscles are connected and like, so like I'm constantly doing it without having to schedule it.
That's good. I do think it's sort of like a flywheel process.
Yeah, it's like a flywheel.
At some point, it'll like catch.
But communities too, if you're just around people who are doing it. So like I'm gonna join a community, and then 5 o'clock they got jujitsus. I'll show up. I don't got like extra practice. I just need to be there. Think about jujitsu too. I'm a lazy person in a lot of ways. So like if I go to the gym and try to work out, I can't do it. If I sit down and like the buzzer goes off and the guy starts to fight me and try to kill me, then I have to fight back.
Yeah.
So like, no effort kind of workout.
Yeah. Community is key here. I have decided to pursue, speaking of community, I've decided to pursue getting a motorcycle license.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So many of my friends, including my roommate, Zach, like has a motorcycle. Yeah. And last week I rode on the back of my friend's motorcycle to the beach, which was like an hour there and back. And it was the whole adventure. Like we ran out of gas at some point, and then we just like what do you call it when you hitchhiked? We hitchhiked. And it was so fun. This guy in a Porsche ended up picking us up and like helped us with the gas station or whatever. And there's something, you talked about violence being that absolute like base experience or base experience of reality for human beings. Yeah. And I feel like when you're on a motorcycle, it's a similar thing. It's a similar experience because you have to be consummate with your environment at all times.
That's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. It's funny you say that because I've been thinking and writing about this, and I use motorcycles as an example. But funny enough, I've always been very unattached to material objects. But a couple of weeks ago, I moved out of Miami and I sold my motor scooter. It was like not a motorcycle, but like a 50cc motor scooter. And I sold it, and that was the first time probably ever I felt deep sadness parting with a material object because I love that scooter. And the experience of like, the way I think about it is the experience of riding a scooter or motorcycle and you're going fast. And what's happening is you're using your fluency, you're using your physical capacity to navigate this environment. And it's happening fast. You're responsive. You're like, your attention's like looking for like threats, and you're just super engaged in the environment. And I contrast that to like being, getting around like an Uber. Or, where you're going from point A to point B, but you are not involved at all in the process.
Right.
And a lot of people are getting like electric cars now. My mom got a new car, and like these robots are taking over. And like there's a meme that I think is one of the most dangerous memes in our society. That it's better if we are not involved in like life. Basically, we're not involved in locomotion. We shouldn't do locomotion. We should have robots do it for us. And as a result, we're atrophying our fluencies because it takes manual fluency.
Right. Yeah.
For a motorbike, but not to like have your robot car drive you around everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you get no meaning in your life because part of the meaning of life is actually developing mastery.
Yes. I was having a conversation with a friend about this. Do you know the movie Mr. Nobody?
I haven't seen it, but I know of it, yeah.
Okay. So the premise of Mr. Nobody is this guy who basically, for some reason, knows everything that's going to happen, no matter what choice he takes, essentially. And the conclusion that he ends up coming to at the end is that each choice would have had as much meaning as the other. Now, and I said to my friend, I was like, there's something not sitting right with me.
That sounds like fundamentally
with this movie.
Fundamentally wrong.
And I couldn't figure out what it was. And the problem was, if you know everything that's going to happen, there's no spontaneity. There's no possibility of mastering a craft. Like if you wanted to play guitar, like how would that philosophy even work with this experience of learning how to play a guitar, right? If you know everything that's going to happen, like how can you, there's no consummation with the environment, with you and the environment becoming one, if you already have superimposed an end.
Yeah.
Teleologies, and I find that, with a lot of the technology that we have, it seems like the value system that we're being taught is to try to control and predict every single thing.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Right?
I haven't seen the movie, so I won't comment, but at least that notion is those two things you said, which is if I were basically omniscient, and then the conclusion is then all my choices are equally meaningful. That's super sinister for lots of different ways. And then, like you said, and therefore why come into contact with reality? Like the way I interpret all that is our first flaw as humans, especially nowadays, is hubris. We say, what if I know everything? We kind of think we know everything. That's how we make policy. That's how we live. Like, oh, I know what's going to happen. Like that's a deep thing where people don't realize the limits of their own ignorance. And so I know the choice. And then second is nihilism. So all my choices are equal, is all equal meaning. It's like, no, like this choice saves that baby's life. This choice is New York. You know what I mean? Like, but whatever. And then the third thing you said, which is the coming into contact reality. If you know and control everything, or then you don't have to, then you already are reality, which is you already are God fundamentally. Yeah. Right? But of course you're not. And that is why you have to enter humbly into the unknown and develop mastery. So you can have an intellectual experiment. Like I actually really hate those movies when like the guy's like, he's in a fight scene and he's like, if I punch this, then, I saw one like Sherlock Holmes. I
actually love Sherlock Holmes though. That's funny that you say that.
Not the movie. I haven't seen like the whole movie. Someone comment on the whole movie. But that scene where he's like, there's a scene I just saw on YouTube where he's like fighting some guy in a street fight or in a cage fight, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna crack his rib here. Then he's gonna respond this, blah blah blah, and then this is gonna happen. And like 15 steps, and I was like, yo, anyone who's ever done martial arts before, this is ridiculous. Because the whole point, like just Kamaru Usman, the UFC welterweight champion, was like dominant champion, and then last week he gets kicked in the face. He was winning that round, gets kicked in the face, knocked out. Like you can get knocked out. So it's like you don't. So martial arts. Another reason why you should do it, because it humbles you. Like only people who don't fight have philosophies like that.
I do wonder though, like specifically Sherlock Holmes, because I do love Sherlock Holmes. Sure. If that is just like them trying to portray a kind of process by which like a Japanese samurai sword master, there's a way in which like if you're, I've read about this, I obviously don't know about it, but like there's a way in which if you master sword fighting in the Japanese tradition, you become so one with your environment that it is the case that you can not see things ahead of time, but see things as they happen. And so I wonder if Sherlock Holmes is like an attempt to like portray that, failing maybe, but I don't think it's like them trying to be super analytical and like because Sherlock Holmes is clearly a deeply flawed character, and that comes out in the film. So I do love that movie, so I felt the need to say that.
One interesting point too, which is the idea that so when you get good at jiu-jitsu, I'm not that good, but like I know what it's like to get better, and therefore can kind of project ahead. So it's really good. And what happens is in the Sherlock Holmes, you plan out a finite path 10 steps ahead. If I punch him, he'll respond this way, and then I'll respond with this, and then this will happen, and this will happen, right? And that's like the rational mind. And then where the hubris lies is not realizing that like there's all these alternate avenues. Now the samurai master or the jiu-jitsu master, the way you train is you integrate yourself with reality. You get so many hours of just crap, so to speak, that what happens is that anything, when you try to fighting a black belt, it feels so. My favorite is fighting a black belt who's like smaller than me and like weaker than me, so they can't use brute force on me at all. And you have this interesting physical experience where like everything you tried to do is just stopped, right? And you're just like paralyzed, but not because you're like overwhelmed with force, but because like you want to move in this direction, and then there's just like a block precisely placed at that movement. And what it is that they, in that specific here and now situation, they have an intuitive sense of all the things that I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what I'm going to do because they're not God.
Right.
But they know how to instantly respond to anything I do with my limited mastery.
Yeah.
And then they do the next one. So they can chain things together. And that's another thing about fluency and mastery is, and speech as well. Like, I don't know what you're going to say next, but like, if you say something, I can respond. So that's really what fluency is about, is being responsive to the environment due to like lots of time on the mat.
I'm realizing that there's so many influences in our culture right now that are atrophying our capacity to enter into a call and response, like symbiosis with the world. And I think about how ironic that is when thinking about, like, let's say the Black Baptist tradition here in America, right? The use of music and this whole like call and response thing happening between the pastor and the congregation. Like you saw it, with Dr. King sort of like doing this. He would say things, if you listen to a lot of his older sermons, he would say things, and then naturally, like the audience would be like, exactly. And that there's that call and response dynamic. And that is being, not stifled isn't the precise word, but that is being replaced with this philosophy that says, actually, what we need to do is be very authoritarian about language. And say what cannot be said, and what sort of like put boundaries around specific words that you can't use, that's quote unquote ableist, right? And that is dangerous for so many reasons, but one of the most important ways in which it's dangerous is it's atrophying our capacity to use this as an instrument, right? To be receptive and to do that call and response that's like basic to, I think, being able to be in relationship with the sacred and being able to be in relationship with other human beings, like in general.
Yeah, we know this topic is near and dear to my heart. My mom's from Nigeria, and I grew up in the U.S. My dad's a white American, so I've always been at like this nexus point between like traditional and modern culture, and so I've always observed these differences. And that the words I use to describe that dynamic is the participant dynamic versus the spectator dynamic. And one story my mom told me that I always find interesting is, so my dad went to Nigeria to teach, and that's how he met my mom. And he taught English literature and stuff. And my mom took him to a Shakespeare. They're doing a Shakespeare performance, in some town or village in Nigeria. And, we think of, go see Shakespeare, and the audience sits down in the theater and we all shut up and people do the thing. But like that notion is just so foreign to like, the Nigerian or the African mind. So what happens is like things are going on, very compelling, universally compelling drama because it's Shakespeare. And then people are like, don't do that. And then people are like, yelling at this, like, get him, he's going to kill you. And like, and then to the point where
that's like, amazing.
People would jump up on stage and get involved.
Oh, wow.
And then the actors would have to like,
how do they respond to that?
They stay in role and they'd be like, sir, please, if we come, and then like they'd be like, and then they get him off the stage and stuff like that. But like, and my dad was just like mesmerized. He's like, what's going on here? Like, the thing was, it wasn't that they were like, oh, these are the rules, let's break them. It's that to them, and it's so hard to explain to like a Western audience, but like, there is no
fourth wall. There's no fourth wall.
There's no fourth wall. There is no separation of mind and body or like from earth. Like, it's all integrated. So they're there. And even like when you speak with Nigerians, like I'm going there soon, I'm learning Pidgin English, and like just the way Nigerians talk, there's always like this banter going on where they're kind of like, people are like pretending to be angry, but they're not angry. Like, I'm not going to do it though, and like everyone's like acting is weird. Like, super fun and playful, and it's nonstop. And versus the spectator, that's the participant dynamic, call and response. We're all here together. Spectator, I think the history of our culture over the past 1,000 years or whatever is we're all singing and dancing and playing together. And then it goes like, okay, you guys are really good at singing and dancing. We'll just sit here and watch quietly. Then it's like, you know what, you guys sing and dance in a studio, and then we'll just be in our houses watching on a screen. Better yet, how about we all get our own screens, and then let's just sit here by ourselves and our whole entire physical fluency is turned off. I just passively spectate and then, get back.
Yeah, that was Wally. That was like
Wally.
That was what Wally was critiquing.
That's not Wally. Wally is us now. We are Wally. This movie's already happened. Yeah.
It's very terrifying. Yeah, it's interesting. Like this gradual abstraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really it's interesting. I'm just thinking, I do sit down and watch dance videos of like the Les twins from Paris, but I am a dancer. And so when I watch it, I'm like, I have noticed, and it's particular to dance. When I watch dancers, it's not that I necessarily move when I watch them, but like I will watch them and then I'll go dance and I will be able to do some of the things that they're able to do.
Oh, sure. That's mimic method.
But that's mimic method. Yeah. That's not like purely spectating. But yeah, and now we have Meta coming soon with Facebook.
Screw that stuff.
Yeah.
I always teach people, my students, that I always tell people, you don't actually hear with your ears, you hear with your body. So what's happening now, everyone listening, they already have the physical capacity to make the movements I'm making with my mouth right now. So what's happening is you're sensing them through their ears, but you're experiencing them through your body. And that's the essence. And that's why if you can't get the accent and pronunciation, then you'll struggle with listening comprehension because people are making movements you can't perceive. And if you put like a scan on someone's brain, say we take two people, you and I, you're a better dancer. So you put like a scan on your brain and you're watching like Les twins do a move and your brain's going to fire more like in the mirror neurons and whatnot than mine would because those movements you can actually perform. So you're actually them in your body.
I see. Yeah.
I'm saying versus like a Wally person and it's just like white noise.
That's crazy to me. I don't understand how. Do you think we're overstating this though? Because how is it possible that one would be entertained by just passively watching something that isn't actually registering in their body at all?
Well, it is in the sense that it's just not with high resolution. So, if I'm just like this completely like, non-moving, person and I'm watching someone, I think like every human being has that like dancer in their soul. They're going to go away no matter how many robots try to take it out of us.
Yeah.
And so like that part of you, like that final center cluster of neural networks is like still there, like dancing inside of like the other person. Like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And then, but of course, the person who actually fully embodies that spirit, going to notice like
it's going to be way more
real. And that's the thing. I put that hierarchy there. I'm like, it's better.
Yeah.
To know how to dance than to not know how to dance. Call me ableist, but it's just better. Not just for you, but for me, because I'm going to watch you.
Yeah. Do you know the work of Jordan Hall?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love Jordan Hall.
So I just started getting into his stuff. Yeah. And because like obviously I was into Vervaeke and I was like, how do I like steal the culture and scale theory of enchantment and like then I started watching Jordan Hall and there was a switch that went on within me that was like I went from this idea that as I get older I want to like live alone and be more independent and because now I have roommates and then it switched to oh wait I actually want to be in community. I need to be in community. I need to be local. I need to be in community. I need to develop communities of practice, like you're saying. Yeah. So I'm taking the time to develop and figure out what that even means. Do you have any ideas on how to steal the culture, given your range of experiences and these different avenues?
Well, I go to Jordan Hall. One thing he said, I heard him say like maybe a few years ago when I was trying to make sense of like COVID and like society and that stuff. And he said that society is a simulacrum of community, right? And community is the actual base experience that we have as humans. And then we've got these much more complex societies. That had an impact on me and my thinking. And that you're talking about being alone and in like, cooking your own food and stuff like that. And you're getting to something which is important, which is the sense of self-reliance. But we have this false dichotomy between like self-reliance and other reliance. In reality, no one's truly self-reliant. You always rely on others. The real thing to look at is the distinction between communal reliance and institutional reliance or societal reliance. So, for example, I can rely on Uber Eats to deliver my food, or I can rely on my friend to like make me food, and then she relies on me to like do her taxes or something like that, right? So, again, this analogous to this movement from participation to spectator. What's in tandem is this movement from communal reliance, so relying on people who are local to you, your family, and your network. And then we can operate at a much higher level of scale and complexity if we don't limit ourselves to our kin networks, to our local physical networks. And now I can cooperate with somebody in, China to make my clothing, and I don't know these people. So we're getting hollowed out because I'm relying on strangers and robots to serve my essential functions in life. So what I'm trying to work toward is creating, for myself, relationships where another way of putting it is the separation between the practical realities and relationships. So I can be friends with you and hang out with you, but I don't depend on you for any practical need. And that's the problem. And because I don't depend on you for a practical need, I don't have a strong incentive to work through all the very difficult challenges there are in like living in community and relationship.
Yeah, and relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm focusing on now, where it's like, yeah, I can hang out with people I like and stuff like that, but like I need to place myself in situations where I just rely on this person.
Yeah.
For my day-to-day,
I actually started introducing myself to more people in my neighborhood these past few weeks, just as a basic, tinkering with that.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's really important. And I think my analytical brain was very avoidant of that for whatever reason. My analytical brain is more comfortable with that separateness.
Yeah.
But my right brain actually craves it and, depends upon it and needs it. And I've been studying a lot of Jung and the masculine and the feminine. And, the feminine in particular is all about being with what is. And I think this is another way to say being consummate with reality itself. If you think about studying the notion of eros, right, as an archetype, and this dovetails with ideas in Tantric Buddhism and the transmutation of desire. And what I've learned from studying all these things is like the goal, the ideal is to go from seeing the erotic as like, erotically desiring a man to your entire relationship with reality itself is erotic because you've become consummate with reality. And so and in order to do that, that requires entering into deep relationship with the people in your neighborhood, with cooking, with getting a motorcycle, like anything that requires a kind of craft, the development of a kind of craft is the way by which you become consummate with your reality. I'm curious for you though, because you're constantly traveling. Does travel give you a greater temptation towards the sort of I'm depending upon strangers, or do you deliberately, dive into a community even when you're traveling and make sure that you're like soaking up the indigenousness of the community itself?
Yeah, for sure. When I originally was traveling with the purpose of learning a language, I would go to a place and spend several months to like a year in that place. And then like my purpose and my art, my craft was I show up to a place where I knew absolutely nobody. And then, by the end of the year, I'm like the king, that's kind of like people go, like, hey, so yeah, it's the bay, like that's kind of like what the thing was. And I learned a lot of social fluency skills in those processes. So I'd integrate myself with the community, with the culture. And then because I was too hyper novelty seeking, perhaps, I want to do it again. Let's try it. Germany. And then, so at this stage of my life, I'm 34, and that was for most of my 20s. So I had lots of enjoyment in my 20s, kind of pursuing diversity. And then towards the end of my 20s, I started to lose the sweetness and savor, so to speak, of it. And I got like jaded by just traveling around all the time. But now my habits are still in place, so I'm kind of screwed. What I'm working toward, like my ideal future is one in which I am embedded within an existing traditional community structure, probably of African origin. If not in Africa, then in Afro-America, like in Brazil is probably where I'll probably end up in. And then I have layered on top of that my communities of practice. So, I have my school and I'm contributing, teaching people stuff, learning things. And my day-to-day life. And of course, my family. That's the kind of anchor piece of all of it. So so I'm done traveling. Like I'm traveling now more for practical purposes. Like I'm in Scotland now to visit a friend. I'm going on a vision quest in the Highlands, and then I'm going to Portugal for a month to train some people and stuff. So it's more like practical, but what I'm building towards is like enough of this travel nonsense that like I want to spend most of my year like on my land.
Yeah. That's cool. I really respect that. I would love to. Okay, so I know you're going to stop traveling soon, but if you are planning on going to Africa or Brazil, let me know, because I would be interested in traveling with you and see the world through Idahosa's eyes. That would be epic. I remember the last time I saw you in New York, and we went to a Daybreaker, and then we were like on the subway. Oh, this is when I was trying to learn French.
Yeah.
So you're back there, and we parted ways, and then we saw each other again. And I was listening to Stromae, and you're like, "What are you listening to?" And then I took my earphones and I put it on, and you're like, "Yeah!" It was such a moment, and I feel like that was just a sliver of seeing the world through Idahosa's eyes.
Well, one time in Montreal, Stromae did a concert, but he was like the song. He's like kind of drunk, pretending to be drunk. So he was on the Montreal Metro, like drunk, and then he kind of comes, and then it was like a spontaneous thing. So literally, I was like following Stromae in the streets. I'm like, that's
so cool.
Yeah, I think at some point for sure I'm going to do that. Like the stuff I'm building towards now is making things more embodied and experiential, and so working towards like people come to a physical location where that language is being spoken, and like we guide you on an adventure. Like,
I would pay good money for that experience.
Definitely a market.
Yeah,
because that's what I love, man. I just love sending people into the unknown. Like if I boil down what it is I'm like born to do, it's like equipping people with like the fundamental tools that they need to embark on a journey of their own into like the wild, into the unknown.
Yeah.
And I just love, like I personally, when I see people stuck in their Wally chairs and like being protected and safe and blah, 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 like at a deep, like archetypal soul level, like of who I am, it just like infuriates me.
Yeah.
Grab them all, put them in a helicopter, and just airdrop them into the jungle someplace.
Wait, speaking of, do you know the show Alone?
Oh, I saw one season of it and I loved it.
That's literally what they do.
Yeah, I loved it. I don't like the ones like the Naked and Afraid ones where they kind of like weird people and they making fun of them. But those guys are experts, they're masters of the craft, and like
that's like again become consummate with reality itself.
Yeah,
such
I've been getting into like wilding, and like I did like during COVID. I got really into nature, and like I'd spend a lot of times like by myself in the woods, like while everyone's like inside, like the anxiety's palpating out of the computer.
Yeah.
It's hugely therapeutic for me. I would just like leave everything, go in the middle of the woods by myself, and just like hang out there, like dancing naked in the woods. People were like freaking out in COVID. I was like, yeah, where the squirrel's at?
I see you, squirrel. I see you.
I see you, squirrel. Yeah.
That's amazing. I haven't gone that far yet, but maybe one day.
Right there, it's just waiting for you. There's a whole forest out there waiting for us to dance naked in it. But no one different people. Like no one's gonna stop you.
Yeah. I'm making it a goal of mine in the coming months and weeks and years to just do more of those things. I've definitely like since the last I saw you, I've definitely cooked more. For example, more than ordering out, more than Ubering Eats. So it's interesting. I'm interested in the. Sorry, my email's going off. Sorry, guys. The etymology of words.
Yeah.
And Viveki introduced me or intrigued me about that. My English teacher from 10th grade introduced me to it, but like Viveki reawakened and reignited my love for it.
Yeah.
And if you think about the word alone, the Jungians say that the original meaning or source of that word was actually all one.
Oh, wow.
And so when we talk about that balancing or figuring out the tension of the opposites, right, whether physically in something like functional patterns or spiritually and harmonizing the masculine and the feminine within you, or mentally, right, and left brain, right, master and his emissary coming together.
Yeah.
Like, that is now my framework in figuring out how I can be alone in the sense of how I, not dispensing with community, but how I can be all one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I know. So I said I got into being in nature, and it's interesting because when you think about being alone, what you're saying actually is that you're not around human beings, right? But another thing I realized in my whole getting into nature stuff was that the being in like the woods, not alone, there's squirrels there, there's insects, there's actually teeming with life. There's a massive difference between being alone in a building, like your bedroom, and being alone in the woods. Because in a building, what you're surrounded by is dead man, right? Dead man-made objects, right? Like it's like this table, this wall.
I see.
It's their constructions. It's like the father. It's like, but it's like the dead father, so to speak, right?
Jordan Peterson.
Whereas when you're in nature, literally everything in your field of view is like organic and living and teaming.
Yeah. And it's like psychedelic.
Psychedelic, yeah. It's like a completely different effect on your psyche. So I realized that like being alone in like a dead person is different than like being alone in
with a corpse
being of the earth.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the thing. People, I'm so alone. And I'm like, go into the woods. Like, I want to be alone. It's like, you're not going to be alone. You could be
Yeah, that's a great point. The title of that show is kind of a misnomer. Alone.
But not according to your etymology.
Right. Yeah.
All in one. Yeah.
All one with the rest of the universe, so to speak. Have you been reading any interesting books lately?
I don't really read. I do audiobooks. So
all right.
I've been going through Body Keeps the Score, which has been really good.
Oh yeah. I started that a few months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And I've actually been doing too much. I've been going deep on like learning anatomy and physiology. So most of my off time has been spent just like literally just staring at a map of the body and like my body around. So yeah, I can't think of what I'm reading or listening to right now.
I don't know if you want to get into. I don't know if you want to talk about functional patterns. I am enjoying it. I know you've sort of had like you've sort of went through it and now you've leveled up to a different thing. But I say that because my trainer is always telling me to get this map of the human body, and I'm like, that's a little creepy. But
well, that's my thing now. Basically, so functional patterns I did at the end of last year to fix my scoliosis. And the main thing I learned from the first week of that is the goal of your fitness exercise program should not be to like get this muscle strong or this muscle flexible. It's to integrate your entire structure. And that idea of integrity or tensegrity like blew my mind. So functional patterns is a method for achieving that. A few months ago, I kind of stumbled upon my own methodology for it. And that's what I've been developing for the past few months. But one piece of it is, I call it fiber. It's called fiber fluency. And the idea is that fluency in general, whether it's language or anything, reality exists as like a network. And so like the French language, there's this network of words and meanings. And what it means to be fluent in that network is I can show up like the samurai master. And because the network is embodied within me, I can navigate and my agency.
Internalize the network.
Yeah, internalizing the network. That's what fluency is. So fluency, agency is a measure of your capacity to get things done, achieve a goal within the network. Fluency is a measure of like how wide reaching you can achieve, how many goals you can achieve and how quickly you can do them. So I might have basic agency in French that I can like order food at a restaurant, but fluency is like, I can do anything in French. So anyways, your body is a network. Your muscular skeletal system is a network. And all your pain problems and all your strength and weakness problems are boiled down to what's happening in that network. And my issue with functional patterns is they had a good process for you physically like integrating, but they're trainers, they're physical trainers, and they're not teachers. I'm a teacher first and foremost. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to figure out like what's going on and how it's happening, and no one was able to like explain it or teach it. So I learned it myself, and now I'm developing a process where you do my program, and by the end of it, you'll just know. I can be like, Chloe, how can you get from your scapula, your right scapula, to your like left toe? And you're like, go through this, and then like you just like see the network in your mind, and you feel it in your body. And
interesting. Yeah. So when is that going to be done?
So I'm going to Portugal now. So I just more or less finally mapped out, not the whole thing, but like 90% of the muscular cells in my own body. So I've networked a large percentage of the body, and now I'm like running faster. I never knew how to do striking. I'm like shadow boxing, like super fast, like doing kicks. It's crazy.
That's cool.
Straight up like the Matrix. I have like superpowers. And anyways, so I was focusing on myself for the past few months just to like, get the basic map. Now the next stage of the mastery for me is teaching, because when you teach something, that's the way you really master it. So in Portugal, I got a bunch of people lined up, and I'm just trying to spend as many hours as possible just transmitting what I know to other people, getting that skill inside of them. And so I'll be doing that for the month. And then in the process of that, I'll produce the first kind of artifact, like my first curriculum and like database. So probably like in October, I'll have something like just published that like, it's because it's very complex and you need probably guidance. But I like my general business model is I put everything out there for free. Same for my language stuff. I put everything out there for free for those individuals who like can go deep on their own. And then I do like cohort training and one-on-one training around that curriculum as I continually develop the craft and make it better each time. So I think I have like V0 of the curriculum up by October after a month of just like intensively trying to, because you have to teach someone a bunch of times before you know how to put it into like a dead artifact that will be for someone you're not interacting with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting, that whole process. It's I wouldn't see it as a dead artifact. I would see it as a symbol. Of course, it could become dead if people lose.
I don't use dead pejoratively. It's just like, like this wall's dead. Like it's not it's just like dead. Maybe a better way of saying is that it's unresponsive.
Okay, I see.
A teacher's responsive. I can see you're not getting it and adapt my strategy.
Yeah.
Whereas my online course is not going to be like, maybe in the future when the AIs are like scanning your face, but I'm not about that life.
I don't think that's possible.
I see you don't understand. Would you like me to call the authorities?
Yeah, I don't think that's actually possible because of 4E cogsi, but because AI isn't embodied, fundamentally, it won't be able to like really figure out when you're not being able to comprehend something.
You can do it like if like I give you a test and you answer the test wrong. Yeah, they already have that kind of smart learning things where there's some kind of knowledge and then you answer the questions wrong. They take your wrong answers and then like give you lessons based on those wrong answers.
Okay.
Yeah. So technology is getting more and more.
But that's different from like looking at your facial expression and being like, I can see that you're not.
Dude, they have technology now that can predict with high accuracy whether or not someone is depressed or just by looking at eye movement scanning. So you put a camera on your computer and then it looks at your eye movement and they're like, yeah, he's depressed. And like, they use that in China, man. You may look into China, like the surveillance in China, especially in the Xinjiang region, they'll scan people's faces.
That's wild.
Emotions and like, yeah, dude, technology we can do a lot of stuff with technology. And that's why I'm a Luddite. I'm trying to resurrect the Luddite movement. That's one of my other projects.
Do you think we'll be able to get to a place where we can, if we take on this project of becoming consummate with reality itself, we can like bypass or trick the machines, essentially?
Yeah, well, essentially now that you're saying it, that phrasing of consummate with reality, I think we have two choices, all of us, at any moment in time, and it has to become consummate with the machine or become consummate with reality. And, you see what I'm saying? So when you go in there and you're learning how to cook, you're learning all that stuff, because there's a fluency to learn how to use Uber Eats, to learn how to like, Japanese met.
Press the button.
Yeah. And the whole point though is that the machine is not reality, and it's getting more and more powerful and stuff, but it would never be more powerful than reality. So me personally, I want my body, my senses, and my soul and mind to be shaped by Mother Nature and not by like a robot.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's gonna be a split. There already is kind of happening one where you see in the movies all the time, it's a common theme. You have like a Borg type people who like become like, you know, like the Wall-E, the Borg, you know, the Matrix is like, you're just a cell basically in this creature, and there's no autonomy in you. And then you have like the Ewoks in the jungle. And I made my decision a long time ago that like, if it comes to the point where like the machines come in to destroy, I'm going to be there in my loincloth, like freedom. Like, I'm ready to die for that. But so I'm going to be a tree person. I'm going to be an Ewok. That's my goal.
All right. Definitely getting more ideas here. We will leave it at that. I want to talk to you at a future time about DJing and music, but let's leave it at that. Something to think about in the future, something that I'm grappling with. I want to DJ for massive amounts of people. What is the role of someone whose, I guess, gift or goal or offering? What is the role of someone whose offering it is to provide people with music? And how does one make sure that they are shamanistically integrated such that they can offer this to people? Because I've been to venues and such that are just like not it. And there's like thousands and thousands of people in, and the artist or whatever, the energy is just like not on the right vibration. And it's such a missed opportunity because obviously music can heal people.
Yeah, for sure.
So
dark shamans and light shamans, you gotta.
For next time. Thank you, Idahosa.
Yeah, for sure.
For coming on the Heart Speaks podcast.
Thanks for having me. I had fun.